you've got some real strong ideas about the Suzuki Method and, you know, what's missing or what we're losing sight of. What can you say about it?
Well, you know, I was recently, this is a sentence you will never hear for the rest of your life, but I was thinking about a line from the third movement of Luciano Berio's Sinfonia, which is, can't stop the wars, can't make the old younger, can't lower the price of bread. And when you talk about music, it's true, it can't do any of those things. And so when I think about it, it's not music that's going to change the world. It's how we make music that will change the world. And I think that that's the real strength of the Suzuki Method, is in the qualities that we're trying to foster in young people. Compassion, nuanced and careful listening, discipline, love, willingness to listen carefully, all those types of things, accountability. And it's in that kind of teaching that I think Suzuki was putting his heart. It wasn't about having a method that's going to create the best players. It was a method that was going to create noble humans. And I think we have to be really careful with the Suzuki Method to define who we are there, rather than getting too swept up in how fast we're creating great players, because it's supposed to be a lifelong process to become a great player. And I just hope that we can hold on to that, because that's really our strength.
So how does that get lost, or where do you fall or where do you find like that's not happening, or why is it not happening? I mean, what needs to change?
I think that everyone's doing a fine job, but I think that it's important for us to make sure that when we're educating our parents, when we're talking on the world stage, that what sets the method apart is not the 10 books. What sets the method apart is the aim of the method, which is to create good people, help create people who are willing and powerful citizens on every level.
So the 10 books are repertoire that was chosen in a certain period of time. Are you sort of implying that like that repertoire could be expanded or additional, you know, I mean, obviously Suzuki Method has been supplemented in various ways.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think we need to look toward chamber music sooner, because the qualities that are needed to play with other people, group class is very important, but also chamber music, one-on-one expression, learning how to express yourself clearly and encourage somebody else to express themselves, whether it's, you know, in a Mozart quartet or whether you're improvising together, anything, to really look to the other person and want to empower them rather than have power or compete with them. You know, that's what makes music amazing, is that if you are able to empower another person while you're playing, then you really are better together than apart. And you really can create music that you couldn't do by yourself. And that's where a competitive nature is not going to help. That's why some of the greatest quartets are made up of maybe players that wouldn't necessarily have been high-powered competitive players, but when they come together, they create, you know, the most amazing music. So I think the chamber music aspect is important. I think that teaching improvisation and not necessarily just geared toward jazz, but just from the concept that the great composers improvised. They understood how music fits together, and then they put their mark on it by making music that really comes right from them. And I think that's another part of the whole idea of a mother tongue method, is that it's not just that you learn how to speak works of the great poets, but you learn to speak your own sentences, your own vocabulary. So I think that's important too.
What about orchestral practice?
For myself, I've started trying to move some of the really great orchestral works I try to move in a lot of the great orchestral works early on too.
Now you mentioned about the chamber music, some specific ways that you're getting the kids involved, like through the Bartok duos.
Bartok duos, yeah. The students love them, first of all, and right at the beginning they introduce some pretty obnoxious dissonance that helps the students to feel that music can really, I call them nose crinklers, like those moments of major and minor seconds. And I feel like when they play right at you with those major and minor seconds, they get a moment of a real, like almost electric jolt of what that music can feel like. And then when they feel the dissonance in music that's maybe a little more subtle, they got that grounding in it first, of feeling that not just dissonance, but dissonance against another person. And that's the great thing about string instruments, is that it creates that rub, that you don't get, say, with the piano.
How do you get them into how do you teach, how do you sequence it?
Well, we look for those nose crinkling moments. So I'm assuming a child who, is alive.
So, but I mean, like, do you have them, you mentioned that you have them play the second part and the first part?
Oh, yeah, right. So we learn both parts. First they learn the first part, and then immediately following that they play the second part. And that also works them into thinking of music as not, there's the part for the better player and the part for the player who's not as good. They just know that the music has several parts, and they can choose whatever part they want.
And after they do Bartok duos, then is that sort of preparing them for like quartets or something?
Right, and I like to move them into quartets from there, because the Bartoks take quite a long time to get through. And then we do the same thing with string quartets. We'll do, they'll learn the first violin part first to give them an idea of how the music goes, and then I will play the first violin part while they, play the second violin part.
Well, there's a lot of misconceptions about Suzuki, and there's a lot of, I was Suzuki trained, and I'm a Suzuki dad, but of course I also teach sort of outside the realm of Suzuki, because I teach jazz, and I teach improvisation and harmony. I really felt that, Suzuki was a great thing, but I felt like also there were things that were missing. And so I felt like it was really important for me that my daughter could learn some of those things that I didn't learn, like more hearing the harmony, for example. Like, Suzuki kids learn melody, but they don't really learn to hear harmony, or they don't learn to hear outside the range, or even outside the tone quality of the violin, typically. They also aren't encouraged to improvise or compose. So it's a big part of my sort of, soapbox. And I mean, and now you're talking about also adding orchestral music and chamber music. I mean, I just love what you're saying about making it centered on, because we can talk all day long about, it's important to learn this, or it's important to learn this. There's so much music out there. But it sounds to me like you're saying, whatever you do, have that barometer be the basic tenets of Suzuki's approach, and this idea that it's about making a whole person.
It's about service. I mean, that is in the end what we want to teach each other, is that service is one of the highest things that you can attain in life.
What do you mean by service?
We make music. I mean, you talk to an artist, and artists have many different reasons that they want to make music. But I think that ultimately we make music to serve other people. We make music because we want to make them feel good, or we make music because we want to challenge them, or we want to, make them uncomfortable. But in the end, it's still a service to them.
And you said, like, in regards to chamber music, like you would also think of service as far as like the second violinist is playing the music in service to the first violinist.
Right.
But also you're saying that the whole quartet is in service to the audience, is that what you mean?
Right, to each other and to the audience. And that's why, it's really the approach, the Suzuki approach is, I think, about as perfect as it gets. And you can say that you've got, they need to add more about harmony, they need to bring in more pieces or whatever, but in the end, the whole point is to remember that this is about serving other human beings. And then you can bring in all these various aspects, and that we have, God willing, till we're 90 to sink deeper into all those facets. It doesn't end when you're 20, and I feel like that's a really scary thing about the music world, is that people think like they haven't made it by the time they're 21, they should, stay with them your whole life, they will continue to serve you, in creating new types of review for yourself, and starting early, not just age-wise, but just deciding that you want to learn about something earlier before you try to execute it in public. Listening, keeping your environment positive, all those things help to foster better people.
And what about, the extent to which Suzuki trained musicians, how do they incorporate music into their life ongoing if they don't become professional musicians? I mean, how do you address that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I personally think that the way you keep music in your life is really no different than a professional, except that you're not getting paid, but you still are going deep, in the same way that your literary life keeps going deep. If you wanted to keep reading books, you keep trying to understand whatever it is you're looking for in literature, the human experience. So I don't think it's really much different, but I think that the real benefit of the method is for the people who decide they don't want to keep playing, because even if you are a Suzuki student right up to the high school and you quit, you've still learned these really basic, important things about how to live your life and about how to build something, whether it's how to study for a class, or how to approach a relationship, or how to build a family, or how to deal with sickness. All those things involve listening, staying with things, reviewing things, and keeping your environment in a place that will nurture you to keep growing and understanding. So, I know it's a little esoteric, but that's to me, that's the greatest